हेलो दोस्तों। तो कैसे हो आप सब लोग। एक बार फिर से आप सभी का स्वागत है फार्मा टॉक 360 के प्लेटफॉर्म पे। सो एज आई promise to you all that I will provide you the complete table of general pharmacology। जी हाँ, आज हम ले आए हैं फार्माकोलॉजी, वो भी जनरल टॉपिक्स से रिलेटेड सारे टेबल्स को हम इकट्ठा इस सेशन में कंप्लीट करने की कोशिश करेंगे। तो एक के बाद एक आपके सामने टेबल मैं रखता जाऊंगा। आपको इसी टेबल से हाई यील्डिंग क्वेश्चन आते रहेंगे, क्वेश्चंस जो कि कॉम्पिटिटिव एग्ज़ाम में आते हैं, और उसके अलावा भी कभी कभार शॉर्ट क्वेश्चन के फॉर्म में आपके जो सेमेस्टर एग्ज़ाम है उसमें भी पूछा जाता है। तो let's start to the section. Today's section will be going to be a short session. So let's start. That's first we talk about that active drug, active metabolite. So slightly I just have to zoom it. So we talk about that those are the parent drug. If we talk about codeine, yes, codeine is further is mainly metabolite as a morphine. We know that tramadol. Tramadol is ortho desmethyl tramadol. It's particularly metabolite. Furthermore, we talk about that diazepam. Yes, diazepam is mainly having the active metabolite is dismethyl diazepam. We talk about that nord-diazepam or oxodiazepam. So those are the all of the metabolites of if you talk about the active metabolite. And furthermore, that chlordiazoxide, it's mainly as active metabolites. It's like dismethyl diazepam, oxazepam. It's similar as diazepam. And furthermore, talk about that chlorozepate. It's mainly dismethyl chlorozepam. And amitriptyline is active metabolite from its nortriptyline, imipramine, disimipramine, like venlafaxine. Venlafaxine is a mainly active metabolite having desvenlafaxine, fluoxetine, norfluoxetine, loratadine, desloratadine, hydroxine is a cetirizine. It's kind of this kind of metabolite is known as the active metabolite. So furthermore, we moving towards as a loratadine, sorry, losartan. It's mainly having the metabolite. It's exp 3174. And if you talk about hydroxyzine is a mainly active metabolite, is having the cetirizine. It's a second generation antihistaminic. And keep in mind, it's a tricky question sometimes asked in uh, previous year question. If you talk about, it's a first generation antihistaminic, we know that hydroxyzine. We will cover this topic in furthermore video in future. And if you talk about the cetirizine, it's a second generation antihistaminic drug. So like this way we can say that it's a parent drug hydroxyzine is furthermore is mainly metabolite into the potent drug. We know that its active metabolite is cetirizine. So furthermore, we talk about spirolactin. Spirolactin is having the active metabolite of candrinol. Morphine, morphine having active metabolite of morphine 6 gluconide. And here we can say that a gluconide conjugation reaction will be there, phase 2 reaction. Prednisolone, sorry, here so here we can see that prednisone will mainly having a active metabolite. It's a prednisolone. Tamoxifen having the active metabolite. It's a 4 hydroxy tamoxifen. Endoxifen. Camozepine having camozepine 10. And 11 epoxide. It's a very crucial, is having some time asks a tricky question. So let's move forward. So we look in this further in the slide. That's inactive to active metabolite. Sometimes we call it the prodrug. This concept is already elaborately covered in this previous video of this particular session. We talk about that general pharmacology. So here's the parent drug. We can see that Enapryl is having the active metabolite. We know that says enaprylate. So it's a product basically. It's a inactive state. If you talk about parent drug, it's an inactive state, having the active state is an appellate. So this kind of class of drug, we know that a AC inhibitor, angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitor. Furthermore, we talk about the it's a perindopril. So pril, we know that pril, that's pril. We also know. So pril, those all are the pril drug. You can see those are prodrug. You can see it's a Melody, Ramipril, it's a Ramiprilate. So all having it's this kind of uh, if you talk about prefix, it's like suffix, it's like lat, lat. And furthermore, talk about all of the angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitor. So like here we can see that phosphinopril, phosphonoprelate. So all having the lat. You can see that, so that's a basic thing in this particular drug conversion. It's mainly inactive to active state. You can see all having this lat. If you concern of about that angiotensin converting enzyme. So like you can see that codeine is mainly is the inactive state, and furthermore we talk about codeine is further converted into the morphine. It's we know that opioid, it's a classes of opioids, and tramadol also it's having the uh, active form. If you talk about it's further converting into o desmethyl tramadol, it's a opioid. It's like a clopidogrel. We know that anticoagulant. So it's a mainly class of drug P2Y12 inhibitor. And furthermore, we talk about that active thiometabolite is the active constituent of this particular product. And pregabalin, it's a mainly active metabolite, is like having uh, inhibitor of the P2Y12. So furthermore, levodopa, yes, levodopa is further converted into dopamine. It's an active drug. We know dopamine. It's a anti-Parkinson drug. And prednisone having metabolite is like prednisolone. Corticosteroid will be the classification of this particular prednisone. We know that. And cyclophosphamide, if we talk about cyclophosphamide, is a phosphamide mustard. It's a anti-cancer drug. And azathioprine, we know that azathioprine is also the thiopurine, active thiopurine metabolite will be there. We talk about that isophosphamide is the active alkylating metabolite, you know that. So those are the anti-cancer drug. If you talk about azathioprine, it's a immunosuppression drug. So here we further talk about that 6-mercaptopurine. It's a thioguanine nucleotide. Thioguanine nucleotide is mainly anti-metabolites. And furthermore, we talk about that famciclovir. So vir this class of the drug. We know that those are the antiviral class of the drug. Furthermore, in video we will talk about this particularly into antibiotic session. So we talk about antiviral. So those kind of drug will be discussed in future session. So let see that valcyclovir, we can see that acyclovir. And furthermore we talk about that valgland cyclovir. So it's mainly is the active form. We can see that ganciclovir or ganciclovir, what you have to pronounce, you know that well. So here is the antiviral drug. And furthermore talk about that fospentoin, yes, so it's converted to phantoin, anti-epileptics, so yes. So bambitrol is terbutaline, is a beta 2 agonist, we know that beta 2 agonist. So further we talk about that licks dexamfetamine. We talk about that dextroamphetamine. It's mainly the active form of it says a CNN stimulant. And furthermore talk about the sulfasalazine having the active metabolite. It's sulfasalazine is a prodrug, and it's having the active metabolite. It's a metabolite in two session. We can see that 5 aminosalicylic acid and sulfapyridine. It's mainly a anti-inflammatory. It's used frequently in IBD. We know. So dibeprin, epinephrine. We talk about that qualstamivir. It's mainly Vosalter maybe is carboxylate. It's mainly it's active form. It's and antiviral drug. It is so. Furthermore, we talk about that active drug to inactive form. It's basically we know that active drug have to be inactive in particular metabolism process because it's a metabolism process. Furthermore, we talk about another process is excretion. So to be excrete out from your body, the body always demand for is a more polar substance. That's why metabolism process is happening in your body. So active to inactive is the most mandatory state, that. So most of the drug will fall under this category if you talk about. So this table is not sufficient for this, but you should remember this particular thing that I just want to elaborate it here. So propanol, lidocaine, you can see propanol is an oxidative metabolite having, and furthermore we talk about that lidocaine, oxidative metabolite inducing makes sex, and if you talk about and for the product, so it will sequentially form for the product. So that's why you talk about this lidocaine. And furthermore we talk about that the ibuprofen, it's having hydroxide and carboxylate metabolites. And furthermore we talk about that paracetamol, we know that PCM gluconide conjugation will be there, sulfate conjugation is there, will be there. And if you talk about that morphine, but you should keep in mind that gluconide is the major here. And morphine, if you talk about morphine, yes, morphine 3 gluconide. So warfarin having hydroxylated metabolite. And furthermore we talk about the phenytoin, it's a PHP so it's a tricky sometime. That's it's a inactive state of this phenytoin. And furthermore phenytoin will excrete out from your body. Thiophyllene, yes, thiophyllene is mainly multiple metabolites having. So it's a concern always if you talk about sometime, uh, because thiophyllene is having the multiple metabolites. And furthermore, we talk about the caffeine. Caffeine is the paraxanthine and theobromine and theophylline. And furthermore, we talk about that chlorpromazine. Chlorpromazine, it's we know that chlorpromazine is an antihistaminic drug. It's having the multiple metabolites. It's another thing. So haloperidol mainly metabolized through that's a reduction oxidation, and it's having the reduced and oxidative metabolite. So that's table is very important. Furthermore, we talk about the toxic metabolite. Yes. So this table has a very important frequently asked question in previous year. If you talk about you taking any kind of previous year question, so you will see that napki will be there. Yes, it's the toxic metabolite of paracetamol. It causes the hepatotoxicity. And furthermore, we talk about that a specific treatment or the antidote for this napki is N-acetyl cysteine. Yes. So furthermore, talk about methanol. Methanol, we know that it's converting formaldehyde, and formic acid will be the ultimate fate of this methanol. So formic acid is very harmful. So if you talk about it, causes the optic damage and furthermore metabolite acidosis. So at this stage, we mainly prefer that fomepizole plus dialysis. Yes, this situation is very crucial situation. And furthermore, we talk about ethanol glycol having toxic metabolites like glycolic acid and oxalic acid. It will be the ultimate fate of it. And it's causes severe acidosis, and renal injury will be the ultimate situation. And furthermore, talk about that specific treatment of it. It's fomepizole and dialysis. It's the ultimate treatment of it. But furthermore, talk about that cyclophosphamide. Yes, cyclophosphamide is converted into the toxic metabolite is arecoline. Arecoline, you can also see that it's a ifosfamide. So it's mainly also the having the same metabolite arecoline. And those are mainly similarly produce that's cystitis. And furthermore, we talk about that hemorrhagic. So it's misna as the ultimate treatment at this situation. So it's the ultimately the antidote at this situation. So furthermore, talk about that pilocarpine. Yes, pilocarpine, we know that. And pilocarpine, it's mainly convert to the toxic metabolite. It's o toluidine. Yes, orthotolerant. So here we can see that how the major toxicity will be there. Here we can see that it's methanoglobina, so its causes and ultimate treatment for this is methylene blue when appropriate. So that's all about that toxic metabolite. Furthermore, we talk about that in the elaborative manner into the session of this particular session end basically. So end of this particular session I will provide all of the drug and antidotes. So that's my word of meaning. So here we can see that cytochrome 450 enzyme inducer particularly. So it's a major enzyme. This particular drug is metabolites in our body, we know that. So here we can see that particular inducer and their particular main enzyme and pathway. So which enzyme and which pathway will be triggered through this inducer, we talk about this furtherly. So here we can see that particular drug is rifampin, and we can see that carbamazepine, phenytoin, phenobarbital, brimidone will be there, and furthermore we talk about that dexamethasone, epirazine, and further to talk about nebiferin, glycophovin, modafinil, smoking, and chronic ethanol. So here you can see that a main enzyme and pathway. I'm not going to elaborate each and everything because it's a summarization session. You know that. So I try to provide all the table format. So this is not relevant. You should not have to recall this one. And furthermore, talk about this set John's word. So this concept is not relevant here. So we just have to exclude this one for this particular table rather than those all are the enzyme inducer. So keep it in mind. So you can make small tricks for this. So I did not provide any kind of tricks because I will provide any kind of trick, so it will not will be recall or remember for you or to you, so it will not suitable for you. So the good thing will be, so you just have to prepare the tricks or mnemonics from yourself. It will help in your study and boost up your recall. So furthermore, we talk about that enzyme inhibitors. So all of the enzyme inhibitors are mainly concluded in this particular table. We talk about this. So I just want to say that you should at least remember this enzyme inhibitor name, because frequently asking question, if we talk about that's previous year question. So all of the pyq session of this competitive examination, you know that GPAT, you know that NIPA, you know that it's a IIT PHU exam. So such kind of exam like if we talk about NIPA, IIT, and furthermore we talk about that competitive exam of any kind of pharmacist exam, or any kind of DI exam at least. So all this competitive exam are mainly frequently asked this kind of question. You can take any kind of previous year question and try to relate with me. So it is very important. So here enzyme inhibitors such like cimetidine, ketoconazole, itraconazole, clarithromycin, erythromycin, so like grapefruit juice, and furthermore we talk about that weird class of drug, ritonavir. So like this way you just have to recall all this like cobicistat, like fluconazole, voriconazole, amiodarone, diltiazem, verapamil, and fluvoxamine, ciprofloxacin, isoniazid, metronidazole, clofenicol, quinidine, fluoxetine, paroxetine, and bupropion, and furthermore omeprazole, and disulfiram. By disulfiram, we know that, and valproate or valproic acid. So those all are enzyme inhibitor. So keep it in mind. Like you just have to similarly. I want to suggest you that particularly make mnemonics. It will help you always. And here some uh, cytochrome isoenzyme and the substrate inhibitor and inducer. We will talk about both. So classic inhibitor and classic inducer. So here we'll see that there is sub isoenzymes of cytochromes, and furthermore we talk about that important substrate of this. You will see that theophylline, caffeine, clonazepine, those all having this classic inhibitors. It's like ciprofloxacin, fluvoxamine. Frequently asked question if you talk about so it's mainly previous year question it's asked frequently. And smokes, yes, smoking is an enzyme inducer, as we know that. So furthermore, we talk about that it's a cytochrome P2C9. It's warfarin, pentoin, NSAID. So it's a mainly enzyme inhibitor, such like of drug. Those drug mainly inhibit of the ability of this particular drug or the action. So like fluconazole, amiodarone, rifampicin. We know there's a inducer, it's induce, so metabolism will be faster, so drug will be required more. This concept is already discussed in previous session, so you should go for this particular section, and please proceed further for this particular video. So furthermore talk about that cytochrome 2C19. So diazepam, omeprazole, and clopidogrel. So it's having enzyme inhibitor. So those are the all kind of enzyme inhibitor can inhibit those kind of drug, such like omeprazole, fluvoxamine, inducer. If we talk about rifampicin here, so here, for example, that cytochrome P2D6, it's a isoenzyme, and you will see that codeine, metoprolol, and TCS, yes, tricyclic, you know that antidepressant. So those all the enzyme inhibitors is like quinidine, fluoxetine, and paroxetine, you know that. So here, for the specific way of the particular drug, if you talk about codeine, metoprolol, and TCA have no clinically important classical inducer, because inducer are classified here mainly having the clinical relevance, so that's why I included here. So if you talk about cytochrome P3A4, it's midazolam, simvastatin, statin, and citalopram and cyclosporine. It's mainly having, so it's a spelling mistake. It's will be cyclosporine. I don't want to deliver any kind of listing or any kind of knowledge that will be hamper in your future. So cyclosporine is the proper spelling is here. So and another many drugs are like, so furthermore talk about that classic inhibitor ketoconazole, clarithromycin, nitonavir, grapefruits juice always. And here we see that inducer cyclic kamazepine, rifampicin, phenytoin, those all the inducer. And furthermore talk about that last one, the cytochrome PE2E1. It's ethanol, paracetamol is the important substance are here. And furthermore talk about that enzyme inhibitor, it's disulfiram, and conic ethanol will be the inducer. So moving towards the next slide, it's consisting of valuable information about teratogenicity and the drug mainly causing this teratogenicity. So we know this drug substance as a teratogenic drug. We know that, and already have covered this session elaborately. So here is the drugs and the proper examples of the teratogenic. So if you talk about thalidomide, it's the classic teratogenic drug. So that's why I have right here classic teratogen, because at first teratogenicity is observed in the thalidomide. It's actually uh, immunomodulatory drug. It's actually an immuno immunomodulatory drug. Yes, my friend. So as I say, or as I told you that this section will not going to be a long session. So isotretinoin, so it's a class of the drug. We know that retinoids. So furthermore, we talk about that cholecalciferum. Uh, okay, so sorry for the disturbance. So here we see that isotretinoin is mainly is a retinoid. So you will see that craniofacial cardiac and CNS abnormalities will be there. Valproate with the valproate, yeah, there is a neural defect will be there, specifically spina bifida. Yes, this one is very important and asks frequently in previous year questions. And furthermore, talk about this anti-epileptic drug, carbamazepine. It's cause the same as this valproic acid. So its neural tube defect is prominent with this, and it's an anti-epileptic drug. And phenytoin, furthermore, talk about that fetal Hydantoin syndrome. It's a very important thing, and craniofacial is also prominent will be there, and cardiac and limb abnormalities will be there. And furthermore, talk about is also an anti-epileptic. So for phenobarbital, we talk about phenobarbital. Phenobarbital, it's a congestional malformation will be prominent with this drug, and it's an anti-epileptic. And furthermore, we talk about that trimethadone. Trimethadone, we know that it causes that clip plated. And if you talk about that cardiac and craniofacial and lip defect is also prominent with this particular drug, and this highly teratogenic anti-epileptic drug. So furthermore, we talk about this warfarin. So warfarin is the causes that fetal warfarin syndrome. So this syndrome, so those kind of syndrome is frequently asked in the previous year question. So if you talk about further nasal hypoplasia and stipulate epiphysis, and here is the anticoagulant. Yes, SE inhibitors. So those kind of drug is causing frequently fetal renal dysfunction and oligohydrodynamics. So as to talk about this further, that skull lunge abnormalities will be there. RAS inhibitor. So we know that RAS inhibitor is not the RAS inhibitor. It's a brief classification of the RAS inhibitor, and into this RAS inhibitor, it's particularly classified as angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitor. So all angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitor, so those are mainly causing this kind of symptoms of this kind of fetal abnormalities. We will talk it in this particular video. That's of hypertension or hypertensive drug or antihypertensive drug in future. So ARB, angiotensin receptor blocker. Yes, we talk about angiotensin receptor blocker. So one drug will be there. We know that aliskiren. Sorry, it's a direct blocker name. Angiotensin enzyme blocker is different. So we talk about that fetal renal dysfunction and oligohydron means so will dominate with here. And you talk about that RAS blocker. It's also categorized as a RAS blocker. And furthermore, if I want to categorize is ARV. Yes. So tetracycline, we know that tooth discoloration and impaired the bone growth. So we know that retardation of the bone growth will be there, and it's an antibiotic. Yes, aminoglycosides. So it's causing the neonatal autotoxicity. It's a very important and the primary toxicity of it. And furthermore, talk about that it's a class of drug of the streptomycin. And methotrexate, yes, methotrexate is mainly causing that fetal loss and craniofacial skeletal abnormalities, so it's very prominent with this. And if you talk about it's an anti-metabolites and cyclophosphamide anti-cancer drug, we know that it's an alkylating agent and it's causing that multiple congenital abnormalities, so it's very important for this particular drug. And my sorry, it's a mycophenolate. If you talk about that mycophenolate, it's a mainly for the cause about pregnancy and loss and congenital malformation, so it's very important for this particular drug. And it's an immunosuppressant. Methimazole, we talk about that methimazole, it's mainly anti-thyroid drug. And furthermore we talk about its causes that aplasia cutis, and it's characteristics of employopathy, so it's very important. And furthermore talk about radioactive iodine, it's very crucial and very highly teratogenic substance. If we talk about that fetal thyroid destruction, yes, is destructed totally, so no kind of abnormality will be there. It's rather than abnormality, it's merely believe in destruction. So very powerful ingredient that is. So if you talk about it's a class of drug, it's contraindicated in pregnancy, and it's merely anti-thyroid, considered as the anti-thyroid class of drug. So furthermore talk about that danazole. Yes, danazole. It's a viralization and musculization of the female fetus. It's very important. Danazole. It's a androgenic drug. And furthermore, talk about that DIS dilacylstilbesorm, and this is clear cell adenocarcinoma of the vagina, cervix, and epox daughter. So it's very important. It's mainly we talk about its particular class of drug. It's histological teratogens. So all the teratogenic drugs are listed here, and remain of this or some of the drug, uh, if you find out, so let me comment into the comment section, because there are lots of detergents in this particular world. So if we talk about, so all the thing is very crucial for this competitive exam. So let's move forward. That's antidote, toxin. If we talk about drug toxin, specific antidote, so it's hopefully one of the last slide of it particular session. So we talk about that paracetamol having the antidote in acetylcysteine. So it's very crucial, frequently asked questions. If you talk about that, the opioid having the antidote naloxone, so it's mainly the blocker of the opioid receptor. And furthermore, talk about that benzodiazepine having chromazepine. If you talk about that organophosphate, here is the tricky thing, is a combination of drug will be used here. It's atropine and pralidoxime. And furthermore, talk about carbamates is such like of the drug atropine and pramidoxime, and maybe considered in a selective setting. So it's a very crucial. If we talk about carbamate causing, you should take it along. Atropine will be sufficient in some cases, and in some cases it's not. So we will go for this particular combination of it. And here anticholinergic toxicity. And furthermore, talk about anticholinergic toxicity, always physostigmine will be there. It's cholinesterase, so we know that. So physostigmine is selected severe cases is anticholinergic toxicity. And furthermore, we talk about that tricyclic antidepressant TCA, so such like as sodium bicarbonate are used here. And furthermore, talk about that digoxin digitalis or glycoside, like cardiac glycoside if we specify it. So digoxin specific PEP will be there. So if we talk about that unfractionated heparin, so heparin, we know that protamine sulfate will be there. Warfarin is vitamin K will be sufficient for this particularly, because it's mainly having the potentiality to block the warfarin effect. So rather more, if we talk about that severe bleeding, appropriate bleeding, we can go for this PCC and FFB. FFB is appropriate severe bleeding. And furthermore, talk about that dagavetran. Dagavetran is mainly having the antidote. It's either Zumab. So it's Zumab. If we talk about Zumab, we know that recombinant antibodies those are. And furthermore, talk about that epoxyban having adixonate alpha and methanol, fomepizole, ethyl glycol, fomepizole, iron. It's having desferoxamine, lead, lead poisoning. We use ADTA most frequently, and Saxima will be there, dimercaprol depending on the severity of the setting. And furthermore, talk about arsenic poisoning will be there. So arsenic poisoning is dimercaprol is prominent here. You can see that. So furthermore, talk about mercury. Mercury is the here we use chelating agents such like if you talk about Saxima and agent depotable upon the exposure of this particular mercury poisoning. And furthermore, we talk about that isocyanate. We know that isocyanate is frequently used in TB. So it's mainly antidote having B6, vitamin B6 pyridoxine. Methotic set, it's a leucovorin. We know that. And further the selective toxicity will increase. We know that gluproperoxide is used mainly for the further in methotrexate toxicity. And if we talk about that cyanide toxicity at this stage, we use that hydroxychloroamine. Yes. So methoglobemia is a condition. It's not a particular drug if you talk about. So at this condition, we mainly use that methylene blue. Yes. And furthermore, talk about that beta blockers. So those beta blocker, we use the glucagon is primarily here. We talk about glucagon. Calcium channel blocker, we use that 4 calcium plus high dose insulin. And here we also go for the euglycemic therapy and lipid emulsion and selected cases, and furthermore we talk about that. And sulfurious, it's mainly having this antidote, octreotide, and thallium. So thallium having that's Prussian blue, and furthermore talk about that valproic acid. Valproic acid, it's mainly having this kind of antidote. It's talk about that L-carnitine and may be considered selective toxicity. And furthermore, talk about that malignant hypothermia is a condition. It's a thermia. It's you talk about that your body temperature will be increased. So you use dendrolate. So dendrolate is frequently used in malignant hypothermia. So furthermore, talk about that some of toxicity is mainly serotonin toxicity. If we talk about so Saturn syndrome, at this stage we will use that cyproheptadine is a selective cases, and furthermore talk about that neuroleptic malignant syndrome, and deltronine and bromocriptine is selected cases. Local anesthetic system for toxicity we use that IV liquid emulsion. So those all the table you just have to remember all the thing you should remember in your mind, because all the concept all I have provided to you. So आपको जस्ट क्या करना है, रटना है चीज़ों को, और रटना है कैसे रटना है, ट्रिक बना के रटना है। मैंने कोई ट्रिक क्यों नहीं प्रोवाइड किया यहाँ पर, मैंने इसीलिए कोई ट्रिक नहीं प्रोवाइड किया क्योंकि अपने से ट्रिक आप बनाओगे तो चीज़ों को आप रिकॉल कर पाओगे। और इसके अलावा भी मेरे पास और भी ट्रिक्स है जो मैंने बना के रखा है प्रॉपरली, इस वीडियो में मैंने शो नहीं किया बिकॉज वीडियो का लेंथ और ज़्यादा बड़ा हो जाता। वैसे ही 40 मिनट के करीब वीडियो जा रहा है हमारा ये। सो मिलते हैं फर्दर वीडियो में, और आपको ये जो पीपीटी मैंने बनाया है इसका पीडीएफ मैं डिस्क्रिप्शन बॉक्स में प्रोवाइड करवा दूंगा। सो यू शुड go through our description section, and always remember those things for this competitive examination, because those all are very crucial। अगर बात किया जाए प्रॉपर एंजाइम इनहिबिटर से लेके एंजाइम इंड्यूसर, सो यहाँ से बहुत ज़्यादा क्वेश्चंस आते हैं। और बात किया जाए फर्दर मोर टेरोजेनिक ड्रग एंड फर्दर वी टॉक अबाउट दैट मेटाबोलाइट्स, और प्रोड्रग से भी क्वेश्चन पूछा जाता है बहुत सारे एग्जाम्स में। प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चन आप अगर उठाओगे तो पिछले साल ही बहुत सारे क्वेश्चन आपको मिल जाएंगे, और पिछले साल और आप अगर जाना चाहोगे तो और ज़्यादा क्वेश्चन मिलेंगे। मीन्स मेरे कहने का मतलब ये है कि ये जो मैं आपको प्रोवाइड करा रहा हूँ इससे क्वेश्चन बनेंगे ही बनेंगे, 100% बनेंगे, 100% बनेंगे ही बनेंगे। कोई भी कम्पिटिटिव एग्ज़ाम हो इससे क्वेश्चन बनना तय है। तो ये टेबल आपके लिए बहुत ज़्यादा इम्पोर्टेंट होने वाला है, तो इसको आप रट लीजिए जैसे भी हो। आपको बस रटना है, निमोनिक्स बनाना है, रटना है, और इसके हिसाब से आप कॉन्सेप्ट को फर्दर अप्लाई भी कर पाओगे। कैसे ये भी मैं बताऊंगा। एंजाइम इन्हिबिटर और इंड्यूसर के जो कॉन्सेप्ट है उसको आप अप्लाई कर पाओगे इजीली। सो फॉर टुडे, आज के लिए इतना ही। हम मिलते हैं फर्दर वीडियो में। सो बाय।